Hi, welcome to the 12th House Podcast. I'm Michelle, your co-host and the head witch in charge here at Holisticism. Delighted to have you. Welcome back to the squirrels who have been here before, to our new squirrels. Hi, how's it going? The 12th House Podcast is a little corner of the internet where we bring together creativity, inspiration, intuition, spiritual shit, the metaphysical, the practical, tactical stuff that comes to running a business. And we bring it to you so that you can do your sacred work, so you can self-actualize, so you can be the biggest you could possibly be. It's really fun. You're going to like it, I think. So anyway, let's get into today's episode. Hi, Wallis.
Hi, Michelle. Happy Friday.
TGIF. How's it going? How you doing?
I'm excited, as always, for these new episodes. We were just talking about how fun it is to research and think about these Friday philosophies. So we hope you're enjoying them.
Yeah, and our goal with Friday Philosophies, with everything that we do at Holisticism, but in particular these episodes, is to introduce to you a new way of thinking, a different framework, either through like proper framework or mental model, or different people doing different things, different approaches, because I don't know, man, we're just like trying to show you some divergent strategies. So if what you're doing isn't working for you, you know that there's other options.
And you don't feel cuckoo and like you're alone in this world, because usually you're not as alone as you think.
Amen, sister. That's so true. And today we're talking about one of my favorite mental models that honestly, I feel like I learned a million years ago, but I forget about it until like really opportune times. And I'm like, right, the 80-20 principle.
The 80-20 rule. Well, you enlightened me to where it comes from, which I had no idea. So please.
Have you used the 80-20? Like, when did you hear about it? When did you learn about it? Has it always been a thing that you've known?
Yeah, I couldn't think to when the first time I'd heard it was, because I feel like it's something I've applied to so many different areas of life. In particular, which we'll talk about, it's been coming up for me as it relates to clothing and the wardrobe. Mm-hmm. But I think it also relates to a lot of healthy lifestyles.
Yes.
Even the idea of being physically active, because it is a one-to-one huge like antidepressant for me, but I will still fight it all the time for various reasons. Doesn't matter. I find a reason every week to be like, I don't need to work out. But I think what I remind myself often is the benefits I reap from doing even like a 30-minute getting my heart rate up or going for a walk. It doesn't have to be intense, versus 30 minutes of sitting down looking at my phone. And that makes me think of the 80-20 rule, because you can do 20% of things differently and affect 80% of your life. So it comes up a lot for exercise for me too.
We just had a mind meld, because as we started recording this, we obviously have our notes, but I didn't write down anything about exercise or training. And I was like, oh yeah, training is such a good example of the 80-20 rule. And then you said it. Look at us. We're on the same wavelength.
It's just a good reminder when you're like, I have no motivation to be active. And then you're like, you know what? Even if I did a little bit, it would be better than me scrolling Poshmark or whatever for 30 minutes.
Totally. Okay, well, we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. So let's talk about the 80-20 principle or 80-20 rule and where it comes from. It comes from an Italian economist, Pareto, who noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the population. And so the Pareto Principle is what we commonly call the 80-20 rule or the 80-20 principle. And he also noticed that when he sort of dug into his research on economic productivity, 20% of Italians were responsible for generating 80% of the nation's wealth. And that figure also matched places in France, Germany, and the Netherlands. So he started to see this direct correlation between 20 and 80, 20% of what you do yielding 80% of the results that you get, which is kind of depressing if you think about it, but also
for so many reasons.
Kind of interesting and exciting, because I think we approach life with the reverse. Like, we assume that 80% of what we do is going to yield us our results, when in fact 20% of what we do is going to get us like 80% of the results that we're hoping for. So that means that like we assume that 80% of our interactions are going to be positive, when in reality, 80% of our interactions will probably be neutral or negative. 20% of what we do yields 80% of our happiness, and where we get joy and experience like the joie de vivre experience of life, right? And if we go into the world, this is sort of like the Stoicism principle as well. If we go into the world expecting like, well, all of my interactions are going to be amazing interactions. All of my projects I start are going to be successful. Every investment that I invest in is going to yield me a return. Then we're going to be so disappointed and actually increase our suffering because we have an outsized expectation or an expectation that doesn't match actually what's going to happen in the world. Versus if we reassess and we go into our day or our life or our experiences, not being negative, but saying like with neutrality or equanimity, this can go either way. I know that the likelihood that this is going to be a positive experience is lower. It's not negative. It's not impossible, but there's an 80% chance that this won't be a joyful, positive experience. There's an 80% chance that my friendship is not going to be one that nourishes me. There's an 80% chance that this project will fail. If we go into our life with that expectation and also know that 20% of the things that we do are going to give us just like the meat of life, that kind of makes it, to me, those 20% instances even more pleasurable, even more like magical and special, because we can appreciate them for what they are, which is statistically rare. And I think if we like approach life from that perspective, it actually might make our lives a little bit easier.
Yeah, unfortunately, my dad's advice is ringing in my ears of how often he'll be like, honey, just lower your expectations. And I think it's clicking more in a way that I don't think that has clicked before, because I've always been like, if I lower my expectations, then everything I do will just be mediocre. And it's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not what it means.
Yeah, it's almost like not lowering the expectations of what you can do, but kind of
what life will give you.
Yeah,
in a
totally.
way.
Yeah, and I think that like we can apply the 80-20 rule to so many parts of our lives. And I would also say like this is a mental model or a framework, and that doesn't mean that it's going to work for everyone. Like there might be people who are listening to this who are vehemently against this idea or philosophy or principle, and that's totally fine. You can decide to apply it to some parts of your life and not to others. You can think it's totally bunk. It's up to you. I have found personally that this is totally true. In the businesses that I've worked at, 20% of the people have done 80% of the work. 20% of the products have yielded 80% of the revenue. Like it's kind of crazy how you begin to see that number over and over again.
Yeah. And I think to your point earlier, it can be both illuminating, but sometimes it can get dark thinking about it. So we have examples that I think lean in both directions that I think kind of applying this to different areas makes me feel like validated, or it just can sometimes make you feel less crazy in certain areas.
Yeah. I think about like my wellness routine, right? Or like, morning ritual. And if you really like look at a morning ritual, only 20% of what you're doing is actually giving you that positive effect and boost and impacting your health. So you don't maybe necessarily have to do the cold plunge and the sauna and an hour of meditation and drink your green juice and call your mom.
According to Pharrell, though.
Yes. Fair. Very fair.
Who we recently covered on Friday Philosophies, Pharrell takes a 20-minute or 10-minute cold shower. It's like, okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Diminishing returns after 1 minute, apparently.
Actually, you're right. That's what Huberman says.
Or another way to, I think about 80-20 is what is the point at which there are diminishing returns? For me, after 2 glasses of any alcohol, I never need more. Ever. Sometimes after 1.
Martini? It's 1. Yep.
Yeah.
Half a martini. I'll have an olive from a martini and I'm like, I think I'm good for the night. I think that we can apply the 80-20 rule or look at it in terms of like, let's say for our entrepreneurs out there, 20% of the content you create is giving you 80% of the results that you're looking for. 20% of the words that you write in an email are going to yield you 80% of the click-throughs or the actions that you're hoping to get from people. 20% of the books that you're gonna read are gonna be actually good books and help you. 80% of what you read is not gonna be that helpful.
I really like that in the notes for this episode, one of the bullet points is most books are terrible. Because honestly, you read a lot. You've definitely read a lot of bad books. I've read a lot of bad books and I haven't even read that much.
Yeah. I mean, 20% of those books are good, but that means 80% are not so good.
So I guess one of my questions is sometimes you can say, okay, 80% of what I'm doing here is not yielding results. So I can cut some of this and some of this I can let go of. I don't need to do it because I can focus on this 20%. But can you cut all of it in some circumstances? I don't know.
I know. I wonder, like, what is the point where you keep sort of having it or like, reducing down to the 20%?
It's part of the whole of the process or the project or,
Well, let's take an easy example, which would be a business, right? So let's say that out of 100 tasks that you do, you call it down to the 20 most important tasks that you have to do as an entrepreneur. Okay, great. To yield the same revenue that you wanted to be making or even maybe more revenue, and that's going to give you more time and help you with burnout, blah, 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 blah. So you reduce down to those 20 tasks. After you do that, I imagine that there's a period of time where you need to like get better at them, right? But you also become more efficient. You probably like narrow and clean up your message. You get better and better at what you're doing. And that means that probably, again, you could eliminate 80% of those tasks that are left over or give them to someone else. You don't have to necessarily eliminate them completely from your business, but they might be things that you want to delegate. And because you're so good at them and you figured out the standard operating procedure for them, you can delegate them to someone with like relative ease. So I think it's possible to like continue to reduce it down and down and down. I think especially if you want to like maintain results. I wonder what the limit is if you want to increase your results. So if you want to like, let's say make more money in your business, you would probably need to take the 20% of the work that makes you money and double that. So like do it twice as much.
That was a great explanation. That answered my question perfectly. I think it's like, there's different scenarios. I think that scenario is a perfect one. I think it's harder when it comes to things that are like creativity based, which we talk about in another episode, overcoming creative blocks. But I think that was a really helpful explanation.
Well, you were thinking about how the 80-20 rule applies to wardrobe.
Yeah.
I love that you're on an endless sojourn, if you will, through the capsule wardrobe.
I would say constantly inspired by you though, and your
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, Michelle has influenced a lot of us with her discovery of the Creative Pragmatism book by Amy Smilovic.
Yeah, it's so good.
Saying her name right?
It's so good. It's expensive, but it is amazing. It's an amazing
It's like
book.
a Bible.
It is. It's incredible.
She's the founder of Tibby. And I will say, if you would like to watch a smart, creative content marketing plan in action, follow them and their newsletter and their Instagram and how they are marketing that book. It's very smart.
Yep.
It's something I've been thinking about as I've moved to a totally different climate. And not only a totally different climate, but also a different lifestyle. I think it'd be different if I moved from LA to like upstate New York. I could probably wear a lot of similar clothes.
Yeah, if you moved to a place that had like significantly more avocado toast and matcha lattes.
Yes.
And vibes,
yes.
if you will. People who run solely on vibes. New York has plenty of vibes, but
yeah, maybe actually parts of Brooklyn. I happen to be in Lower Manhattan where people will run you over if you're walking too slowly. So anyways, different vibes, different events, different opportunities. And I'm thinking about now a 4-season wardrobe again instead of a like 2-season wardrobe. So I've been thinking about the concept of a capsule wardrobe a lot. And I feel the 80-20 rule has stood the test of time in my wardrobe because I constantly cycle through phases where I'm wearing 20% of my wardrobe 80% of the time. And I think you can see that for a lot of people in your life. I feel like it really shows up. And instead of being like, no, I'm going to wear my whole wardrobe all the time, I'm like, okay, I'm 32. This is how it's been.
I'm not changing.
Probably,
yeah,
it's probably going to continue this way. So I might as well lean in and apply this rule to my benefit. So in this case, as an example, if you're like, okay, yeah, I'm into building a capsule wardrobe also, part of recognizing this is what are the essentials that you need to focus on building in your wardrobe? Because to determine like the basis of a capsule wardrobe, you need certain essential items. There's, tons of information about like a 10 item, 20 item, 30 item. You can choose. But the reason that I'm invested in this idea and like pursuing it in actuality is because I'm also trying to limit my shopping habits, save money, and be more intentional. So it allows you to do all of those things because you can constantly refer back to, does this purchase fall in line with my essentials? Is this going to be a versatile piece that I can use for many different seasons and outfits and layer and mix and match? And then you can also be like, is this going to stand the test of time? So you can prioritize quality over quantity, which is huge with clothing these days because it's kind of hard to find.
They don't make them like they used to, as they say. Today's podcast episode is sponsored by Oura Ring. Oura Ring is a health and wellness tracker that is chic, it is cool, and honestly, it makes me feel really good about myself. In my experience as a wellness obsessee for many, many years, most of the fitness trackers or wellness trackers that I've used actually made me feel unwell. And the Oura Ring doesn't do that, which I love. I started using my Oura Ring when I found out I was pregnant, and I literally felt like I was an alien living inside of a human body. I had no idea really like how to establish a baseline for how I was doing on a day-to-day basis. My body was changing. I wasn't moving as much as I was used to. I couldn't exercise in the ways that I loved to. And I was super sick for like the first 7 months of being pregnant. And having an Oura Ring just honestly gave me the baseline of how my sleep was, how I was recovering, and how much I was moving every single day. Made a really big difference in not only my mental health, but my physical health. I can't say enough great things about Oura Ring. In fact, I've bought them for like many people in my life because I love them so, so much. And I'm elated that they're sponsoring this podcast for the next month. I think that now is one of the best times that you can go try Oura Ring if you're interested. From May 4th to May 14th, Oura Ring is running a Mother's Day promo, and select styles are up to $50 off, which is a really sweet deal. I have the plain circular gold band, and I love it. It looks very chic. You can't even tell that it's like a wellness tracker. It looks really cool. I like it a lot. And if you're anything like me, you're someone who trusts their body, trusts their intuition, but also loves information and views intuition as information just as much as analytics, I think you'll really love the Oura Ring in your life. Not only is the actual hardware incredible, but the software is amazing. The app has built-in meditations, movement, mindfulness exercises. It's so supportive in helping round out your holistic health. So go check out auraring.com/holisticism and save $50 on your Oura Ring from now until May 14th. Good for You is a really good example of something that we loved making that took up a lot of our time. And it did not yield results that we were looking for in terms of contributing to our revenue in our business. And even though it was so much fun for us to make every single week, and spend time just like shooting the shit with each other, we had to come to a decision about like whether it was working for us the way that we wanted it to work for us or not. And that was tough. But also I've noticed that I've done this to a couple projects in my life where I'm like, I'm not doing that anymore. I just am not doing it. And dude, I've been super psychic lately. Like ever since I made a couple really key decisions, it's kind of crazy. Like I don't think that this is like a unique to me situation. I think that for a lot of us, we just have so much extra noise of things that we're trying to do. And if we were okay with the fact that only 20% of the projects that we're working on actually contribute to like our wholeness, or our resourcing, which is like emotional resource, mental resource, physical resource, like money. And we got rid of the other 80% that like weren't doing shit for us, but we felt like we had to do out of some like obligated to do them. I think that we'd have so much more space to hear, because like that's just a lot of noise, right? To like upkeep and do and be busy. There's so many little tasks attached to each project that we do, as we know. And Pharrell, he doesn't listen to music. He doesn't listen to podcasts in the morning. And that's because he's like, you got to be quiet. How can you expect to have ideas if you are crowding those ideas out with sound. And I think it's similar with like our busyness, right?
Actually, to that point, if you were going to apply this to, I know it's not so easy to apply it to something like intuition, but how would you kind of use this framework thinking about intuition?
The first thing that came up for me was just 20% of the intuitive hits that you got to act on, which is easy because like, great, that's going to point your life in the right direction or whatever, not right direction, but let's say like the more clear path or where universe is pointing you on. You don't have to do every single thing. Like, cool if you can and if you do, but like, you don't have to listen to your intuition 100% of the time and still get it right. I also have heard that like you only have to get it 20% right with your kids. You know, you only have to be like an amazing parent.
Everyone's going to fuck up 80% of the time.
Kind of, yeah.
That's like a law.
Yeah. It's kind of like a relief to be like, okay, as long as I get it right like 20% of the time, that's great. Obviously, I'm going to shoot for more, but like, I'm a person, I'm a human, and I'm not going to get it right. This is my first time doing this. I also think that it's kind of a relief to think about that with relationships, that not 100% of your relationships need to be these like soul nurturing, deep, like we've known each other through time and space and we finish each other's sandwiches sort of relationships. They can be like 80% of them can be like meh. And that's okay. Like that's actually the expectation.
Totally. I think that's such a relief. I've said this probably on the podcast too many times, but it makes me think of this idea of the closeness of loose ties.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need a friend where you're like, you know what? We just send memes or we just talk about Succession or we just talk about fill in the blank. And it doesn't really have to be that deep, but it still serves a purpose and you don't have to write it off.
Yeah.
I think that's really nice with thinking about relationships and friendships or even work partnerships and networking. Like it takes some pressure off where you're like, you know what? This is fine.
It makes me think of like only 20% of my time has to be productive.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lie that anyone thinks they're more productive more of the day.
Yeah, truly. Right. Yeah. If you think about the 8-hour workday, like you really are only probably very productive for 20% of it. But even like in the time that we spend together, right? Like a lot of what we do is hang out and chill. We need to go get a matcha. We need to go get a silly little beverage. We need to talk about what we did on the weekend. And then like the 20% of what we do talk when we do like dig down and do work or come up with ideas is really good. And that's kind of refreshing. It's not all business all the time, you know?
Everything is everything, as the great Lauryn Hill said. You're reminding me because a few weeks ago on the pod, your episode about growth edging was, you know, like that term specifically came out of us
in a silly, goofy mood. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you're like, wait, that actually works here.
That notion for magical baddies, like a lot of our
so many things.
Our big stuff has come out of just honestly the witching hour.
100%.
Okay.
The 80-20 mental model. Is it a matcha or a coffee drinker?
100% coffee.
I know. I was like, there's no doubt.
No.
Give me the bullet.
It's an Americano.
Yeah, exactly. It's an Americano and maybe like a 2 p.m. espresso shot.
Yeah. What's the one weird thing about the 80-20 rule?
That it's kind of like, fuck it.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little nihilistic in a way.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a weird thing that they do.
I mean, I think it's counterculture to just be like, yeah, only 20% of what I make is good. Sorry. Take it or leave it. You know, like that's very refreshing, but also no one would ever say that. Like in a job interview, you wouldn't be like, I'm really good at what I do, but only 20% of the time.
Only 2 hours a day, really? So
yeah.
No, but I think it's kind of anti-capitalist, right? Because capitalism and like post-industrialism wants us to think we have to work 8 hours, but that's made up.
Pareto says it's a lie. Okay. On the V to P scale, Virgo to Pisces, where does the 80-20 rule fall?
I was going to say like has some Aries vibes.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's kind of like take me as I am, man.
Yeah.
This is it. And also I don't have time for bureaucracy. Like I'm not doing that. You know, that's the vibe I get.
Yes. And no one can take my determination from me.
Yes. It reminds me of that meme. It's someone replying to like a super long tweet storm that someone wrote. They're like, sorry that happened or happy for you. I'm not reading all that. It's like,
TDLR, good for you, happy for you.
Yeah. That's really good.
That's so good.
Okay. What is the archetype sun, moon, and rising of the 80-20 principle?
Yeah, straight, shooter, sun, almost like moon and jester. Like,
yeah, like sacred full vibes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like creative rising, because so many of the creative people that we study and that we know are like, this is just how I do it. Like sometimes I have to go in my studio and fuck around and I don't make anything and that's it. That's practice.
I love that.
Yep.
Okay, last question. Hobbit Holer or Morning Glory?
Honestly, I'm sort of two minds on this. It could go either way for me. What about you?
I think it's pretty contextual. It's not binary here.
Because you could Hobbit hole, go hard for 2 hours and get the stuff done. Or you could be a morning person who, again, gets the stuff done in the 2 hours in the morning.
It is your journey. You get to choose.
Yep. Choose your own adventure, my friend. So what's the key takeaway for anyone who wants to apply the 80-20 rule in their life?
Get creative. Figure out how you can cut down on that 80%, emphasize on the 20. And it doesn't have to be, like we talked about it doesn't have to just be about the kind of productivity side of things. It can be super useful for your business or for your creative work, but you can also apply it to like your personal values and principles. And you can say, according to my core values, which are probably just a few, are you kind of living in alignment with them? Because those are responsible for 80% of your happiness. So how can you prioritize those?
Amen.
That's it.
I love that.
Let us know what you think.
That's the episode. Yeah, let us know on Spotify. And if you like this, make sure you subscribe to the 12th House podcast. Give us 5 stars. Yay. Rate us. If you didn't like it, maybe just send us an email. You don't need to leave a review. It's okay. We love your feedback. Absolutely. But if you like this episode, we'd love a 5-star review. And if you want to leave some nice words for us on Apple Podcasts, that helps more people find us. And that's good for everyone.
All of that. And you can also support us by subscribing to our subscriber feed. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's so helpful for us because, a lot of these episodes are ad free. We spend a lot of time and energy making this all for you. So we give you an extra few bonus episodes each month with the subscriber feed. But you know what? If you just want to throw us a pack of gum or a matcha latte each month, it means so much to us.
Yeah. And if you're like, I don't want that, but I do want the extra content, basically teach a free course every month for the 12th House Plus. So that's what you'll find in your feed. And if you've been wanting to take class with us or you've been wanting to join the North Node, but it's just not in your budget right now, it's only $5 a month to join the 12th House Plus. So we'd love to have you. All right.
That's it. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye. The 12th House is produced by yours truly, Wallis Blanchard. Our theme music is made by Nathan McKay, and our wonderful editing is done by Softer Sound Studios, who you can find more information about in our show notes.